I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Jill Hocus. I'm the environmental educator at the Konza Prairie Biological Station here in Manhattan, Kansas. And we have, as a regular seminar series for the Friends of Konza Prairie, invited guests on the last Tuesday of each month at noon. We do record these and we make the recordings available on the Konza Prairie YouTube channel. So if you are not able to participate in the whole thing or want to watch it again, they are available there as recordings. And we are really honored today to be joined by two honored guests. We have Mr. Arnold Clifford, who's an ethnobotanist, geologist, author, and his colleague, botanist Ms. Shawna Begay, both members of the Navajo Nation, who are together speaking about two huge projects that they're working on their reservation. And they'll be sharing stories about botany, geology, ethnobotany, and other adventures on the Navajo Nation. Arnold, when you get a chance, if you would want to go ahead and start by defining what ethnobotany is.
Okay, with ethnobotany, Navajo ethnobotany, it deals with different aspects of Navajo plant use in terms of Navajo plant stories, the esoteric stories, how the deities are involved in terms of how that plant knowledge came about to the people, and then also it also deals with the classification of plants, Navajo classification of plants relating to like how they're used in terms of either domestic use, like for medicinal plants or tobaccos, or ceremonial plants, or edible plants, or for domestic use, like dye plants or charm plants, or plants that are used for protection plants. And then it also, there's another whole set of plant use that we have that we kind of relegate that to the ceremonial site where the medicine men have their own plant knowledge as well, how they use their plants in terms of plants for ceremonial implements, like holding up like eagle feathers, or like putting together frames like for masks, or like for creating prayer sticks, or creating like different dyes, or different maybe like dry paintings instead of sand paintings. They use like plant petals, like different colored petals for a particular type of chantway system that they call the like the Vidue chants. And then ethnobotany also deals with everyday usage of plants, not only in terms of us, but in terms of our animals, like the sheep, the cows, and the horses. We herd sheep every day, and like when I was a kid, I grew up herding sheep, and I used to observe the sheep all the time, see what they fed on, see what they liked, and see what they avoided, see what they would try out, and then they would kind of taste in their mouth and they would spit it out. And then our elders, my grandparents, would tell us not to herd sheep like in a certain area, like in the springtime, because we different species of like maybe local weed, and just to prevent things like toxic poisoning, alkaloid poisoning, and then also in terms of like how to keep them from getting into certain fields where they have like certain types of grasses which give all kinds of like problems in their throat and their esophagus and down into their windpipe and into their stomach and in their intestinal. So it deals with a lot of different things. And then also when I grew up, when I first started learning, I learned when I was like about 9 years old. My grandmother started teaching me about the Navajo uses of plants, and particularly the edible plants. And then later on the dye plants. She was a weaver, like for 70, 80 years, and the first part of her weaving career, she did a lot of Navajo sand painting rugs, depicting like different sand painting rug designs. And then she went into during that stage, she used a lot of vegetal dyes, like different flowering plants, different leaves, different roots, and different types of barks, and that's how she produced colors such as like red, rose pink, blue, light blue, green, yellow, and brownish and orange color. So she made a variety of colors where she would use that natural color to dye her wool, and then I would come in and help her collect and also help her produce the dyes, and then help her string up the warp, and then she would weave the final product. And so it's kind of interesting how ethnobotany it dwells in every aspect of life.
It's a
So and
topic.
then also have a deity, like a Navajo deity, that kind of that we use to explain like the not the ethnobotanical, but the botanical side of it. We have a deity that's specifically for replanting native plant seeds, and then we have a deity for domesticated plants like corn, beans, squash, melons, and so forth, and beans. And that one's the responsibility of the pet turkey, the common turkey. So hopefully that answers your question.
I think you could probably answer that question for a couple hours. It's um, you and Shawna are working on a huge project looking at not only the ethnobotany of the plants of the reservation, but also the geology. Your 4-volume book set. Tell us a little bit about this huge project that you guys are working on.
Oh, it's a project to document all the vegetation on the reservation. I'm mainly concerned with the native vegetation, and also the introduced species like the noxious weeds and the non-native stuff, because they are the ones that are taking over, and that's where a lot of our range hands are kind of shifting towards. And so it's something that I started many years ago, and I started collecting throughout the whole Southwest, everything from the high alpines, like 14,000 feet, down into the low desert country, which includes like maybe 80% of the whole Colorado Plateau, the whole Navajo Reservation, the entire Navajo Reservation, with some of the satellite reservations as well, and then the areas immediately adjacent to the reservation, parts of southern Arizona, like around Tucson, the Sonoran Desert, partly around southern New Mexico to central New Mexico as well, and then into the Mojave Desert, like California and part of Nevada. And then I started a small collection there right around what's that, White Lake, just north of Oak Grove in Kansas. So I have maybe about 30 plants from there now. So my Kansas collection is growing. And so what I'm doing, uh, including the collecting plants, is collecting all the different types of rocks that are out there, documenting the different types of the geology that occurs out there. And so Shawna, she's helping out with collecting in areas that I have no access to, like around where she's from, where her family's from. And so I got them started with the press, and they've been going out with her and her daughters, and they've been collecting a number of species that were kind of interesting, some of the stuff that they've been finding. And then also she's probably helped me glue like thousands of plants, maybe about 2,000-3,000 specimens that I have in my collection. And that's where the most amount of work needs to be done right now, is actually trying to process the specimens that I have, because in the herbarium that we're putting together, there's probably like 24 to 25,000 specimens of plants that were collected from the whole Southwest. And so every year I including more, and then with whatever Shawna and her daughters are gonna be donating to the future, that's gonna really increase what I have. And so what we're doing is we're trying to document all the vegetation. We're trying to process all this collection as a whole. Right now, it's just me and her working together. Sometimes her mom would also help out. And so one of the things that we've been getting together with some other folks too is to try to seek out funding. We're going to get a nonprofit status here probably in August. And once August rolls around, and once we get that nonprofit status, then we're going to actively start fundraising and seeking out money to come up with a building with a plan, what we're going to call the Carrizo Mound Herbarium and Gardens. And so the floor plan, the business plan is kind of already there, and we're in the process of putting it together. Shawna, I gave her the leeway to pretty much come up with the design of the whole building. And all I said to her is I want me a Hogan design, Hogan type feature with 2 stories. And then she added on all these features. And so the actual design of the floor plan, the actual design of the building, the symbolism of what's going to be inside of the building, in the gardens as well. It all incorporated a lot of ideas that she had. And for myself, you know, I wouldn't have paid that much detail to like you know, making it very showy, and mine would be more drag and like more like a man cave, you know. And so that's why I needed the idea of what she had, because I knew she's had some schooling in architectural design and stuff like that. So that's why I asked her to do that. And so that's what we're looking at, maybe about like a 5,000 square feet building, maybe a 6,000 square feet building. And the gardens are going to be like an herb garden, a native garden, and then also like a vegetable garden, like, you know, like for tomatoes and lettuce and so forth that we can use right there in the kitchenette that we're going to try to put together inside this whole building there. The kitchenette itself is also going to be, it's going to be a teaching kitchenette where we're going to have classrooms, and we're going to be having people come in, and we're going to be doing it ourselves as well, and providing workshops doing like native food cooking, using like native foods entirely. And maybe Shawna can talk about some of the stuff that she designed, and maybe she can talk about some of the processing of plants that she's done for me, and then how it kind of affected her family. You know, how they're really enlightens them, you know, in terms of being more aware of their environment, and then also in terms of just learning. That total learning process is what's kind of like it's a grab hold of them, and they've always had it, but they just need a little bit of encouragement and stuff like that in the right direction to be pushed.
Sure.
So maybe Sean can talk about it.
This is something that's very similar to what I do in my job, is trying to bring young people out to their environment so they can learn more about it and learn to appreciate it, and maybe even fall in love with it a little bit. So yeah, Shawna, tell us a little bit about what you've been doing.
Go ahead, Arnold. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to ask you to talk about what you're doing and about your design.
Oh, yeah, sure. Good morning, everybody. I'm Shawna Begay. I'm from Rock Point, Arizona, which is in the northeast corner of the state of Arizona. And I started working with Arnold about 8 or 9 years ago. And it all started from asking him a question of a plant that was sitting next to him when we were introduced. And it just went from there. It was one of those things where I just couldn't stay away whatsoever. I was hooked. So now I'm doing some mounting for him. I don't know if you can see this. Hold on, my finger's blocking it.
We can.
I do mounting a lot of the plants that he's collected. Like you said, I've probably done about 3,000 of his collection, and I still have a lot to go, which is really exciting. And it's a learning process. It's an interesting world that he's brought me into. I grew up on the Navajo Reservation, and similarly to Arnold, my grandmother was, I used to herd sheep with my grandmother, and she would show me several things about what the sheep shouldn't eat, or how to treat them after they had given birth, things like that. Also, once I had stepped on a snake while I was jogging, and she showed me the wash that you needed to put together to aid. You okay?
Yeah.
So that's where my history with botany is from. And when Arnold asked me to help him with the design of the building, that was just a whole new realm of my psyche, because it was something that had always been there, that I have studied, and it was just such an incredible opportunity to take on. And I incorporated a lot of Navajo teaching and a lot of things that I have experienced and learned, and that I would want to share with the youth of the Navajo Nation, from traveling all over the U.S. Because in my early adulthood, I had the great opportunity to travel selling American Indian jewelry. So I got to meet a lot of artists and Native American artists, and learn about their work and what the symbolisms and all that meant on their work. So in all of that, I should also mention that one of the things that we want to incorporate is the Navajo language. I'm one of the last of my generations to actually speak the language fluently. And I'm teaching my children to speak it. Right now, it's really basic. So I incorporated things like the rug designs right into the front door. It's like a stained glass design, and it's going to incorporate things like the colors that are used in relation to the colors of the four sacred mountains, the represented colors. And also in the garden, we were talking about growing native plants that can be used medicinally, and used as a tobacco and everything. And we could possibly grow and, you know, have people purchase these and use them personally at their own disposal. Let's see. So that's as far as we are at right now. So we're going to be in meetings a couple more times this month for the plans for the herbarium.
I've got some questions for you. Actually, I've got a lot of questions for you guys. And whoever would like to answer them. Now, it's my understanding that you two have two separate huge projects. The education center being one project, and the other project being the production of a 4-volume book set. So you had talked a little bit about the fact that together you're trying to collect the plants found on the Navajo Reservation, backing up and saying that that's no small feat, since the Navajo Reservation is 17 million acres, a lot of it being really difficult to reach. And so, Arnold, talk a little bit about your 4-volume book set that you're planning to put together and what the 4 volumes are going to be.
It's right now I have maybe about 800 pages written out so far, and it's going to be 4 volumes that I'm planning on right now. The first part is going to be dealing with geology, all geology. It's going to talk about stratigraphy, like the different layers that we have. There's probably over 100 sedimentary rock layers that we have here on the reservation. If you go back, like, you know, back in the mid-states, like, you know, right around the Great Plains, there's probably like maybe 10, 12 different layers in that region. And so all these layers have different names, and they're described within the reservation area. And like maybe one layer, like the Chin Lee Formation, for one example, will have anywhere between like 6 to 7 different members across the reservation. And so I'm getting information on each one of these layers, and also what I'm doing is I'm also figuring out the structural geology of the whole reservation area, because we have a lot of major structural features out here, like the monument upward. It's like about 150 miles long by about 30 miles wide. And then to the south of there, we have another uplift called the Defiance Uplift, which is also 90 miles long by 20 miles wide, or 30 miles wide. And then between that and the monument upward, there's a huge basin called the Black Mesa Basin. And then you go between the southern part of the Defiance Uplift and a little bit further south of there, it's called the Zuni Uplift again, where you have the Zuni Mountains. It produces another huge upward area.
So,
and then to the north and west of that whole region is what we call the San Juan Basin. And so all these, the structural geology, the stratigraphy, it all plays into what I call geomorphology, which is the study of landforms. And the landforms is what creates habitat for these plants that we're going to write about. And so that's the first volume.
There you go.
Excuse me, Kyle, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, and that's going to be just 1 volume of your set.
Yeah, that's just 1 volume. And it's very interesting because the stratigraphy alone, there's like 75 to 80 pages right now. I'm not even done with it. I'm including in like where it was described, who described it, who was the first person that described it, where is the type section, the type location, and then what year and what publication it was described in. And then it's going to talk about the mineral content if it has any, like uranium, copper, silver. And then also it's going to talk about the rare plants, the endemic plants, like what plants are endemic to that layer only. And then after this first volume, I'm going to go into Navajo Ethnobotany, which is going to be the Navajo esoteric stories of plants. And then it's going to talk about the classification of plants, and then the different plant names and plant uses for each of the different species. And then the third volume is going to be a traditional classic flora, which will be like a for the dichotomous plants, the dicots, the flowering plants, the seed-bearing dicots. And then the last volume, the fourth volume, is going to be the monocots, which would include like grasses, sedges, orchids, lilies, and typhus, and so forth. So that's how I'm going to set up the flora, like 4 different volumes that way. A part of it is not only talking about the plants itself, but I'm also going to have a glossary, a very extensive glossary, and then I'm also writing about all the different authorities that are included within the plant names that were described on the reservation, like like Marcus E. Jones, like like Edward Green, and like Charles Perry, and like Rupert Barnaby and Stan Welch and so forth, James Reveal. Who were these botanists that were the authorities that described these species of plants? And so I'm writing a description of those individuals themselves, and I'm also doing that with all the individual authors of all the classic geological papers that were described from the late 1800s on to like about the 1950s. So it's going to be a very extensive and very comprehensive project that's being put together.
It's a huge project. Just that by itself, you've got your education center that you're seeking to develop and build and bring in the people of your area to teach them about the botany. Those are both just enormous projects. And I did set up a GoFundMe site so the folks that are here in Kansas might be able to contribute to this, because to my knowledge, you don't have funding. You have ideas and you've got the knowledge and the ability, but the funding is something it's not there yet. And so I did set up
that's
so we could help you.
Yeah, that's what we're speaking of.
Thank you.
And see the, not only is this going to include in the the big horror project, but there's other things that we're looking at. We're looking at producing 2 other types of literature. One literature is going to be like a flower book, like a guidebook, where you have all these pictures of all the common plants, and this Shawna's daughter Naya, she's very kind of gifted, talented in her own way, like capturing these pictures of flowering plants. So hopefully we'll get to the point where she can start taking a lot of these common plant features for us for this guidebook. The guidebook is intended for people that were like sheep herders, like grandmothers, and like just your common everyday hiker. And there's a lot of ladies and even elderly men who maybe took science in high school but never really took it much further, and so they're still interested in learning. And so this will be kind of like a guide for them to kind of get back into being outdoors, looking at what's outdoors, and then also giving them a like a guide as to maybe easy identification for them, especially for sheep herders and ranchers. And then another similar guide that we want to produce is like a kind of geared towards the lower level, like the grade school kids, maybe from second grade, first grade on up to like 4th grade and 5th grade, because maybe a series of coloring book types of drawings and sketches, and that's all going to be a part of this learning center that we're trying to put together. And right now the clientele is already there. There's there's been like a 20-year demand from across the reservation from different elementary schools that I've done like workshops and seminars and then little lectures in small classrooms here and there. Every level from kindergarten to high school across the reservation, they want some type of a center like this where they can come, bring their questions, their answers about geology, about plants, about rocks, about soils, about the ecology, about the Southwest, even history. And so we want them to come to a place where it's already established for them, a safe place for them to come, and where they could learn and stay and learn there for a while. And I think 70% of that clientele is already there with like I said, the grade school kids to the high school kids. And then I also have a whole group of students that are willing to work with me all the time, on a yearly basis, that are from major universities from across the U.S. I've had students like from Rancho Santa Ana Botanic Gardens, from University of California, Riverside, and Berkeley, and then also University of Kansas, also from Haskell University, from UNM, from New Mexico State University, San Juan College, from Navajo College, and then also from one from New York State University. So that they all want to come out here and study like certain genres or certain families, and to provide a place for them where they could stay, provide a places for them where they could go through a reference source that's already available for them with this collection of plants that I have, with this collection of rocks that I have. And I have a huge collection of literature and maps already. So everything's already there. We just need the building to put it into. And so that's what our plan is. This whole thing is going to be geared towards giving back of that knowledge, giving back of that teachings to other people that want to learn. Maybe like a little small baby, all the way up to some elderly, retired professional bots, So that's what we want to do.
It's huge. It's huge. You guys have such great ideas and great plans. You only need about 15 clones of each of you, and you might you have it shot. Okay, so some comments from the folks that are listening. Kelly Yarborough would like to tell you, Shawna, that she thinks what you're working to do to preserve your native language is amazing, and to pass it on. She would like to tell you how much she admires that.
Oh, thank you. Yes. It is definitely a huge challenge. And in grade school, actually, the school that I attended required that you took Navajo reading and writing classes. But I had, like I said, I had already known the language. It was the only language that I knew how to speak until I was in the first grade. That's when English was introduced to me. And the only thing my grandmother told me was learn their language, learn everything that you can learn from them, because you'll have your language, so you'll always know a whole lot more. And it's definitely something that should be passed on, that needs to be passed on, because we as a people are already considered extinct or almost non-existent. I've met people around the country that didn't know that there were still Native American tribes, things like that. So yes, keep us in your thoughts and in your prayers. We'd appreciate it. Thank you.
We support you and admire you, and really appreciative of what you're doing. Sylvia Beeman says to both of you, she's been reading Robin Wall Kimmerer's book about mosses. It reminded her that she met you, Arnold, a couple of years ago at Wisdom Keepers. And you mentioned that you hope to get some students started collecting mosses and lichens. Have you started
Oh yeah.
that project too?
No, yeah, that's something that's really needs to be done out here as well. Even across the U.S., I think rock lichens and mosses have not been studied that well. There's a lot of potential for medical application with mosses and even lichens. Like you think sinus moss that lichen, that's we have a lot of medical application of that as well within Navajo uses. We use raw lichens for like either mordants or like even for plant dyes themselves, you know. And then we certain cases we use mosses like for medical application, like for toothaches and other remedies that need to be cured. So yeah, that's really good to hear. And Wisdom Keepers is how I got to know Kansas a little bit more. And that's they were headquartered out of White Lake, north of Oak Grove. And the field that I met there was just really incredible, you know. It's really neat people. And so I kept going back every year. The only thing that stopped us was COVID. Last year's COVID, this year's continuation of the COVID thing going around. So that's the only reason why we didn't get a chance to go back over there. Hopefully next year we'll be back in Kansas again to continue my collection out there.
We would love you to come back to Kansas, and I'd love to show you around the prairie. You've already been here, but show you again, maybe in a different season. Your volume changed a lot. I don't know what happened. We were having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Still about the same. I don't. It like it split.
Let me see. I have it on full volume right here.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll make it work. Hunter Rose, one of our participants here, is volunteering to work with you guys. If you're looking for volunteers or assistants, she's profoundly interested in ethnobotany and preserving indigenous cultural wisdom, and would love to get involved in any capacity. So we've got a volunteer here for you guys. I know you were talking about the fact that you've got lots of people that want to come work with you, but you don't necessarily have a place for them to go do work because you don't have your education building yet.
Yeah.
So,
you know, once we get up the building, and we'll be glad to accept anybody that wants to come on out and help us out, you know.
So I'll give Miss Rose your contact information. How about that? Will that be okay?
All right, that'll work out really good.
Okay.
And even any of your members are within the area, they can drop by and maybe we can give them a short, quick tour of some of the local features here. In the Plateau where I live at, it's like a living to a national monument, like several national monuments, minus the tourists. We have some
Arnold,
huge
maybe you need to lean in a little bit more to your microphone.
We have some really neat areas like some waterfalls and some red rock country that we can show them out here out in the Konza area if your members are interested in coming out here one of these days. Let me give you a little rundown. I don't know if you can see this.
Yes.
Let me see. Right there.
I love
Can
that
you see that?
This is great. He brought audio visuals.
I'm doing this right out of my car. This is my office.
This is great. I love that.
All right, let me see what I can do here. Okay, this is how geology plays a role into the botany that I study. We'll start off here on these major features here, then we'll move on over to here. And then I have another drawing in the back. So a lot of times prior to a time called the Pennsylvanian Age. The pre-Pennsylvanian Age, we were more closer to the equator, and a lot of the formations are all laid down by ocean deposits, by offshore deposits. And then after the Precambrian Age, like around 150 million years ago, 200 million years ago, then it started like around the Permian. The whole North American continent started drifting northward away from the equator, and it turned more acidic, more dry. And so we started getting this continental deposition, like coming off the mountains. We're getting fluvial deposits. We're getting a lot more sand deposits, like aeolian deposition. And so right around the Laramide time, like there's about 150 million years ago, the Pacific plate, they started getting subducted under the North American plate. And over time, that created a lot of these faults and features that we see here on the southwest that we call uplifts that I talked about earlier. And so this is one of them here. This one right here. This first part is like, if you look at this area, these are like different layers that were laid down flat before any type of deposition or any type of deformation. And then over time, some type of force pushed up these flat line rocks here. There's a huge amount of force that pushed up this whole area. And then you start getting these features that we call like structural features that we call like domes, or we call like anticlines or antiforms. And so what happens is there's an area, I drew this kind of zigzag line in here, it corresponds with this one here, is an area of neutrality where nothing really happens, where it's kind of like a neutral zone. The area immediately below that is an area of compression where the rocks are being pushed together. And the result of how rocks respond to that is they form these X's, what they call conjugate set faulting like this. And you see that in the rock type if it weathers down far enough. And then on top is an area where things are being pulled apart. If you ever try that with tangy taffy, like squeeze it and then just keep bending it until it starts fracturing, like those little fractures on the candy. The same thing happens with the rock, and you get into what we call these vertical joints. And these is an extension zone, and these are later on they become zones of weaknesses, where weathering and erosion becomes accelerated. They'll start. They'll have the water and the wind will start removing material, and they'll start forming something like this. And here's the original zone of compression right here. And here's the area of extension where you're starting to get into these little canyons and little rills and eroded development. And if this continues, this is eventually what you get here at the bottom. And you get these landforms like that. And what does that look like? This is what you would see at Monument Valley. You'll get individual buttes, you'll get individual spires, and a combination of buttes and spires. And so Monument Valley was created in this whole fashion like that. And so these uplifts that I'm talking about, like the Monument Upward, the Defiance Uplift, the Zuni Uplift, they all occurred similar like this, something pushing them up from the bottom like this and creating these features and some features like this later on. Now let's take one of these individually. So what happens is it creates what we call a plateau, a very large, broad area with these vertical joint features on top. And then as the mesa starts to break down, as it starts to weather away, it always retains that same angle on the rock wall and that slope at the bottom. This is called the angle of repose. The angle of repose is determined by the angularity of the rocks that break up. If it's rounded, it's not quite as steep. If it's angular broken rocks, then it's a lot steeper. And then up here is they call this the the slope retreat, and it always retains that same vertical alignment feature, and it retreats in this direction. This side will retreat also in this direction. So when it gets this mesa, it turns from a plateau to a mesa, maybe a couple different mesas, and then each mesa will start weathering. It turns into what we call a butte with the tailor slope below it. And then that butte, as it continues to break down, weather, slope retreat, it turns into what we call a rock column or a spire. And then as this rock column continues to break down and eventually fall over, it becomes what we call a rubble mound with all these boulders scattered on this uplifted mound. Now we'll look at this feature right in here, right where this area is at. Let me turn my board around. So here's the what I talked about earlier, how you get into these this angle of repose here, and then you get into this vertical rock wall. You get into these vertical features, these fractures, these joints. Right here is your zone of weakness where your lithology changes, your rock type changes, and this is where your rock wall will start to eat away. They'll start to undercut because of this underlying rock might be a lot softer, and this will be harder, more massive bedded. So once it undercuts one of these joint fractures, the whole thing will fall over like this, and then it creates these tailor slopes right down at the bottom. And so, in terms of when you get a lot of snow, a lot of rain, it seeps down into these vertical fractures, and it starts percolating down into here. Depending on the rock type that's here, how permeable it is, how willing it's taking the rock, the water, the moisture, it starts to get pulled up. The bottom layer might be more like shelly, more siltstone, where it doesn't allow the water to travel further. So what the water does, it gets trapped in here. It's like an underground lake inside the rock. So the only thing for the water to start doing is to start migrating laterally, and it starts coming out at these nick points, and you get into these areas where into these alcoves and re-entry intervals, and this is where you start the development of hanging garden communities.
Oh, that's cool. So
And that's how hanging garden.
Yeah, so you could look at an escarpment or a outcrop, and you could probably guess what plants are going to be growing at what area and what species potentially.
Yeah, the right here you get a slick rock community, slick rock, rim rock community, totally different species, and then you'll get into these cliff hangers here, like certain eredrons or certain elites and stuff like that. They like these vertical fractures and cliff walls, like the Petrophytum cespitosum. They cover these cliff walls like a carpet, you know. And then you have your own very endemic, rare hanging garden communities that occur in these hanging gardens, like orchids, sedges. There's a neat story that goes all the way back to Durango, about 100 miles away, that controlled that, you know.
That's
So
cool.
that's what I look at during the day, or when I'm out in the field.
Well, you have all of us wanting to come out there and go with you. Oh, look at that.
And then look at this one here. I mentioned this one earlier. This is our deity for botany. I drew this every time I was looking away. I was drawing, you know. And so this is what we call the Humpback Guard. And the Humpback Guard is it has a horn right here. This horn is made out of desert bighorn skin. The whole deity, it's a polymorphic entity, like a human being, like a holy person, and then also a bighorn, like a desert bighorn. It wears a crown of a vest, like a basket, woven basket, and it's a crown of weather. And there's like these little appendages drew in black. They're woodpecker feathers or red flicker feathers. And so the horns, they represent dark power. Like last night, we had some huge thunderheads. These, when you're out in the prairie, you see these thunderheads that might go up like to 30, 40,000 feet into the air. These are the thunderheads that's what's being represented. They're the dark blue, gray thunderheads. That's where all that water comes from. And then these red woodpecker feathers are during the day when you have rainfall that comes and falls, and all of a sudden, after it rains, the clouds will open up. You'll have these real skinny sun rays coming through the clouds. And that's what this represents. And then this basket it wears is darkness, dark clouds at night. And then this black zigzag line is usually white, but I drew it black. The basket's usually white, black but white. I made it white. But it represents like chain lightning between one cloud and another cloud next to each other, and you'll see lightning between the clouds, and that's what it's telling you about right there. So here's its mask, and then it has it wears a collar of Douglas fir, and then it has a rainbow. This is a rainbow. One thing I forgot to draw on this rainbow is it also, the rainbow has attached to it on the top like this, and these are eagle feathers. They're either eagle feathers or they're woodpecker or red flicker feathers. And these feathers here, they represent the early morning rays of the sun coming up over the eastern horizon right before the sunrise. There's a time in the morning that we call Nahogah, which means the time when the ground appears whitish. And when that ground appears whitish, that's what those that's when the sun's rays are coming up over the eastern horizon before the sun, like an hour before the sunrise, and that's what these eagle feathers represent. And then this represents rain, like a rainbow after a rain. And then right in the back is like a backpack, and this is all like a sack. It's a dark colored sack, all black with white bars on it. The white bars, they represent all kinds of atmospheric precipitation like hail, rain, female rain, male rain, this, snow, dew, hail, sleet. And so it's all incorporated into this black bag. Also, what's inside this black bag are all the native plant seeds, all the grass seeds, all the flowering plants, all the flowering shrubs, all the trees and their seeds, all in here with all that atmospheric precipitation. So during the coolest parts of winter, these humpback guards would come out in large numbers when there's extensive cover of fog, like you have 10 square miles of fog or even more. And that's when these humpback guards come on out. They have their planting stick here on the side. That's a planting stick there, right there that I drew in. And so they would use that planting stick, and they would shake their backs and say, "Awoo, awoo." When they shake their backs, say, all these native plant seeds would drop down onto the ground. And as the native plant seeds drop down into the ground, they would dance and push those seeds into the ground in a clockwise fashion using the planting stick. So during the springtime, the early summer, you have all this regrowth and rebloom of all the native wild flowering plants out there, out on the ranchland. And so it's characters like these. There's other characters like Rainbow and Beat Thunder that has given us knowledge about all our medicinal plant knowledge, which is what we call the lifeway medicines or the endogenous. And that has a real nice extensive story. And it's kind of interesting because that story also shows up in the restoration rite of Osiris in the Book of the Dead in Egypt.
Oh.
So that's how far we're gonna take this learning center, this our teachings of botany. And one of the guys that's also going to be a part of this, I have a lawyer. His name is John. Then there's another guy by the name of Rex, and he's a Navajo medicine man. He's an instructor over at NEU at Flagstaff. But the problem is he's very limited to the things that he wants to teach. And so with this school that we're putting together, this research center, this learning center that we're putting together, it's going to give him an option to really dwell on these type of teachings of the Navajo deities, of the Navajo esoteric stories about botany. It incorporates even your whole body, everything from the tip of your head to the tip of your toes. It's all part of body. It's all part of the life zones of what you see out there, from the lowland deserts up to the high alpine peaks. Is what your body is telling you about. It's what it represents as well.
Excellent.
So hopefully that answers your question again.
Oh, that's amazing. We are fascinated and intrigued, and like I said, we all want to come out there and go collecting with you. Mark Mayfield said something about one of Welsh's favorite collecting habitats was, and I don't know who Welsh is. Maybe you know who Welsh. One of Welsh's favorite collecting habitats was those hanging gardens on the side of escarpments like that. He said that lots of cool things there. So yes,
Stan Welch was he was very instrumental in getting publications and awareness about hanging gardens in southeastern Utah. There was a lady that helped him out, and her name was
maybe Mark can...
Catherine Toth from the University of California, Berkeley. She was one of the ladies that helped him out on some of these studies out on these hanging gardens. And there's a number of plants that he discovered in the gardens himself with Stan Welch. Stan Welch is the author of a Utah Flora, and he's also the author of the Flora of Alaska. So Stan's been around.
He's been around. Well,
yeah.
We have come to the end of our hour. I told you yesterday that I could listen to both of you for hours on end. I hope we can support you in a small way, because we think, I know I speak for everybody, that we think what you're doing is a incredibly worthwhile project, both of them, all of them. And we hope we can support you. And if there's anything that we can do for you, please let us know. And if you ever want to come visit us, the door is always open for both of you. I think one of our participants, Hunter Rose, is probably already out the door and down to see you and ready to volunteer. Do you have any? Yes, she said absolutely. She's already gone. So is there anything else, any last words that you would like to impart on us before we close for the day?
I think botany is a very difficult science to get into in the first place, and it's easily overwhelming. But if you have the desire and the willingness to learn and to keep learning, then it's the science for you. And then also it's very rewarding. But you got to keep in mind what we're trying to do is we're trying to document what's being lost out here out in the Southwest. Right now, there's a number of plant species that I haven't seen in many years. And even our medicine men or our medicine people are starting to notice that. They're saying a lot of the medicinal plants, the medicines and tobaccos and the ceremonial plants, the ones that are related to the female side of it are not showing up anymore. The ones that are becoming more dominant are the male medicinal plants, the male tobaccos, the male ceremonial plants. And it all has to deal with our attitude as a people, and as how we change our mindset. Our males are no longer taught to be humble. They're no longer taught to have that feminine quality. Like half of you as a man, you have you as a female, the other half as a male. Same thing with a woman. Have her as a male, have her as a female. And right now and our culture used to be matrilineally oriented, but now we've gone more of the man's side, more machoism. Because of that, that's what's being emulated out in nature. Nature emulates that. Right now, we have rains that are more violent. We have more of the male rains, the male storms, than we do of the gentle female rains. So as a result, we're also getting the same thing in the wind as well. More of the violent winds, raw, intense winds, instead of that raw, nice, slight, cool breeze of the female winds. So the plants themselves are also starting to emulate that, where a lot of our female medicines, our female tobaccos are being, they're not coming out anymore. Is the males are becoming more dominant in even in the medicinal aspect of what's showing out there on the flora, you know. And so when we document the stuff, when we go out and collect and look at the stuff and start documenting them, it shows up. That pattern shows up. And so long term, I think it's going to be very interesting in terms of what we have on file in the herbarium. When somebody comes in to look at that plant, it's no longer going to be there. It's going to be all not just weeds or like introduced species. And so in terms of that, I think it's important. Not only that, but it's the younger generation. We need to give them this knowledge. We need to preserve for them. We need to have a place for them where they could take it freely. And for me, you know, it doesn't. It's not mine. It doesn't belong to me. I think it belongs to all the Navajos that are out there, especially the medicinal stuff, the ceremonial knowledge and the Navajo knowledge. You know, I have no business coordinate. You know, so that's why I have to let others have it and others learn about it too. You know, so that's my closing word for you guys.